Welcome to the Fractured Families podcast. I'm Charity, a dedicated parental alienation coach here to support and advocate for families navigating the challenges of high conflict divorce and custody disputes. I'm here to shed light on the struggles many families face, offering insights, strategies, and hope for those seeking justice and healing. In each episode, I'll explore real-life stories, expert advice, and practical solutions to help rebuild and strengthen the bond that holds families together. Whether you're personally affected or looking to understand more about these complex issues, you're not alone. I'm here to walk you down this path. Come join me as I navigate the complexities of family law, share inspiring journeys of resilience, and advocate for meaningful reform and the pursuit of family unity. This is the Fractured Families podcast, where every voice matters and every story. So today we have Massimo. I'll let him introduce himself. We are starting another episode of Fractured Families. And Massimo has really been struggling with false allegations since 2012. He's going to share his heart-wrenching story with us about his challenge to not be part of his children's lives. And we'll be asking him some questions, and then we'll go ahead and hear his story.
Hi, thanks for having me. My name is Massimo. In 2012, March 2nd, my ex-wife and I, we separated for a trial, and we were going to work things out. Unfortunately, on April 18th, at 2:45 p.m., she texted me upon herself, and she removed the children without my knowledge from daycare and sent me a text saying that they're staying with me and I'm not doing this to hurt you. That was the beginning of hell for me in trying to get back into my children's lives. I faced 4 false allegations at the beginning. Child abuse, verbal abuse, animal abuse, domestic abuse. It took 3.5 weeks initially after April 18th just to see my children. The first thing I did, I tried to go to court with the emergency motion that we have here in Canada. It's $5,000 just to do the motion without even retaining a lawyer. I did that on my own. And unfortunately, up here in Canada, Children's Aid Society, it's almost like the Children Protective Services, they got involved with the allegations. So when I went to court and did the emergency motion, nothing could be done with them still being involved. The court stopped everything and let them handle that part of it. I had very minimal visitations with the children while this was ongoing. I got pushed to the back with the Children's Aid Society because it wasn't, as they put it, an emergency based on some of their other stories. So I got stuck with 3.5 hours during the week and 4 hours on Saturday when I was in their lives at all times prior to April 18th. I also wasn't allowed to speak my native language, Italian, to my children, which I found probably one of the biggest surprises, I guess you can put it. I found out later through records of the CAS workers, that was the mother's idea. So 18 months after that, we did
Mediation?
Mediation. Thank you.
Yep.
We did mediation for 18 months, and it went to 50-50 custody, equal sharing time. I hold the passport. She holds the passports. I hold the health cards. I make the doctor's appointments. She makes the dentist appointments. It was split down the middle. Everything was fine. From 2013 to 2019, there were 5 more Children's Aid Society allegations against me. There were always interruptions and the children taken away. Every single time, though, it came back. Nothing happened. There was nothing. There was never any problems with the children. Fortunately, I didn't know this type of behavior in the beginning. As more and more started to happen and more research online, I started hearing more about this alienation word and starting to put 2 and 2 together. I mean, basically from 2012 till 2023, my life has been a catch-up. What's coming next? How to prepare for something that you don't know what's coming.
Right.
And 2019 was the big legal battle, which lasted from 19 till 22. More time away from my children, more lawyer costs, more struggles. And I lost one of my children because he was at the age of 13, 14, that sweet age that when this sort of stuff happens, I also found a lot of information on that as well. I basically had to bite off my left arm to save my right arm, my second child, if you can understand that analogy. And again, joint custody, shared time, a much better schedule as well. I got out of it, and then it all got taken away again. And after $240,000 plus, 2 refinances on my house, I had to sell my 2009 Toyota Prius back in 2012 just to start everything. I no longer am in my children's lives. That, in a nutshell, is my story. And with your questions, we can dig further in.
Great. So in 2012, how old were the children at that time?
They were 5 and 3. Very, very young. They were
Mhm.
very young at that time.
And in the beginning, when they were 5 and 3, and you were dealing with the disconnect and the minimal visitations, how was the relationship at that time with them, even though it was not as much as it used to be?
I remember after those initial 3.5 weeks when I hadn't seen them for the first time, my oldest, I also had to do supervised visits at first too. That was another stipulation, which is mind boggling to me and
Yeah.
to this whole story. He was actually hiding behind like the wall and kind of like
Hmm.
shy at first.
Yeah.
The youngest just, came running in and he's too
Hmm.
young, but the oldest was kind of like apprehensive at first, but then everything was fine. That's how it's always been when there were exchanges, like my time is up and her time starts or vice versa. There was always that
Hmm.
little bit of awkwardness, but then it goes away. That specifically at 3.5 weeks was the first time I had seen anything like that from my children.
So as the time went on, so you went from 2013 to 2018 and you fought some more. What did you start to notice about the children's behavior in that time frame? And how did they change to the point where your son, the 13-year-olds, how did you start to notice in that time when you started to transition to not wanting to be part of your life?
Um, not so much not wanting to be part of my life. I started noticing them changing, as in not being excited for trips, vacations, road trips. We take lots of vacations here in my household. I started noticing like, wow, my stepson is super excited. We're going to, let's say, Disneyland or Six Flags. And I'm looking at my oldest thinking, that's kind of weird. It wasn't until later on in reading all of these notes from the CAS workers, my ex-wife used to say a lot to the kids, the only reason your father's allowed to go on all these vacations is because he lives in such a small house. Once I started reading all of these things and pointing things out, you start connecting a lot of dots on
Right.
where and when the children kind of changed. I also noticed that they stopped talking about things that were going on at her house.
Yeah.
And that was kind of weird. And again, I'll go back and forth. It wasn't until I read the reunification therapist's notes that my youngest pleaded with the reunification therapist if she can stop my mom. I just wanted her to stop drilling me about what happens at dad's house. My heart completely sunk in 2020 when I first read that. I don't have words for it. I'm getting chills just thinking about like that very first time you read these things.
Yeah.
So the other big thing, I was on vacation with my girlfriend at the time, my wife now in Hollywood, and I took a picture, a FaceTime call, because we were strict on our calls daily with the children when they were young, if you didn't have them. So I'm in front of the Hollywood sign and I'm like, hey kids, look where I am. And my youngest is like, yeah, mommy took us there a couple of years ago. And my girlfriend at the time looked at me and she's like, we went like 4 years ago before. I started seeing memories of things happening, but mom did them first. It was, you can't prepare yourself for these things. It was
Sure.
so odd. These little things, they all made sense as the months and years went on. But with me, there's tons of memories. It sounds weird. I didn't miss out on any of the young stuff. I did the
Yeah.
diapers. I did the Halloween being Halloween today
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
sports and all those things. I was the first one to teach them how to ride a bike and pushing the kids with no training wheels. So yeah, those things are pretty tattooed in my brain.
So when the separation happened, then she said what she did and cut off access to the children. Thinking back through all these years, what do you think it was that triggered that? I mean, we've done a lot of research on alienating parents and their mental instability, right? And that's typically what it boils down to. So in your case, what do you think it was? Like, what was that reasoning?
Um, there was an incident I think a week before at my house with the children, my oldest was misbehaving at the table as a normal 5, 6-year-old would.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And there was some soup that spilled on his book. I threw the book out. He was upset and he started crying, and then everything was fine. Throughout this whole process, and I got it confirmed in the notes with the workers, because I disciplined my son, I noticed throughout all these years, she wanted to be the one to control all of those things. The biggest thing I read was in 2012 with the very first allocation against me. And
Mm-hmm.
I want to dig in more to the children workers. They wrote down, because they're writing down all the stuff that the father and mother say. The mother was yelling at us, why aren't we taking the children away from the father? Like immediately at the very beginning, the very first thing, with nothing proven or anything. It was the lack of power or control I fear for this family of the mother. When I saw that in 2020 in black and white, it's amazing they wrote that down and allowed this to get to this part.
Oh, yeah.
And back in 2012 and 2013, I never even thought of getting these notes. I never even thought these notes existed. I was too caught up with, and oh my God, they were coming over for dinner to watch me feed my children and see how the children interact, seeing how we play. It was what I had to do in the hoops to go through.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was something.
So how did this impact your relationship with your wife? Obviously, the dynamics of parental alienation in the family of the targeted parent, you're going through turmoil, you're experiencing emotions you never thought any parent would have to experience, right?
Mhm.
She has her children. What was that like in your household? How did the kids, as they started to get older, did you see that transition get tougher with every visit, with them getting more comfortable?
My stepson and my youngest are like this. Even I know they are even now, even though there's been this year and a half. So for them, while this was going on, it really didn't affect them at that young age how kids are. As an adult, and you're going through this, I honestly can't believe that my wife did stick around. If you can imagine almost every hour of the day thinking of I can't do this no more. We can't do this no more. What's going to happen next? The bombshells that have fallen already. You're walking on eggshells.
Mhm.
When it's time for my children to come over and it's all three of them, how do we act? How are we going to be perceived? Are
Yeah.
they taking this information and bringing it home to the stress, the constant stress? And it does lead to tension between us two now at this house.
Yes.
And you're
Yeah.
trying to put a smile on your face while the kids are growing up.
Mhm.
In my bedroom here, I have the wall on the door frame of all the notches in 2012, 13 of all their heights. And I just look at that every time I come in here, and we did all that, but behind the scenes was, uh, I can't believe she stuck there.
Yeah.
She had no reason to stick. Her son and my youngest, the minute they met, have been inseparable.
It's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
So when you were going through this and you realized this was alienation, you realized this was more common than we believe. Did you start to notice are you familiar with the 17 alienating behaviors of the alienating parent and the 8 manifestations of the children?
Once I started seeing that, and I actually paused on a screenshot and I took it and I sent it to my wife. We checked off. Every time I saw it, I think we were around between 10 and 13 of them easily. And then
Yeah.
you start opening your eyes even more. You're looking at your
Yeah.
situation even differently. And you start putting all the things that your ex-wife or ex-husband in whatever situation, in my situation, my ex-wife, what are the things that they're doing and why they are doing these things?
Mhm.
And you kind of get an idea of what's going on, but it's like that snowball that just keeps gaining speed and size. And I know I never did anything wrong to the kids. So even to this day, I'll share one of my anxieties that I still have after 10 years, 12 years now. Getting a no caller ID on my phone that first time and them saying, we're here to investigate you for allegations.
Mhm.
As of 2 weeks ago that I got a no caller ID, my heart rate jumps and it sinks. Once you start seeing why they're doing all these things for the control and the power
Yeah.
over you. As of April 18th, when she took the kids, she has all the control and all the power.
Yeah.
And it just goes down from there from why didn't the CAS workers, if they wrote down what was going on, why didn't they say anything? Then from the lawyers to the system, it just keeps going down and down to where we are now, where so many of us are. And for what reason? Other than they hate you more than they love their children. It doesn't get any more simpler than that. They hate you more than they love their children.
Yeah, that's 100%. And they're usually mentally unstable, right? So they're too unstable mentally to even recognize that or even care. And when you think about the consequences of the children and the effects that they have for the rest of their life, it is absolute child's abuse.
100% child abuse against the kids. It's mental abuse against the other parent.
Yes.
And let's not forget, it's financial abuse between the games that the lawyers play. 2 weeks in between replying to emails between the lawyers. Just pure letting time go because you have the kids. What's the rush to do anything? And after the 6th allegation against me, I started to find out that those, the CAS, the Protective Services, start keeping a file on who keeps calling as well. But you still let this happen?
Right.
I don't.
What is the file for? If you're not going to do anything, what's the file for?
The kicker is I spent $374 to print out my entire file. I printed it out and that's when I put everything together. I mean, it looks like government documents where it says mother, but they had to black it out.
Yeah.
They had to read. It's like I'm reading UFO files here. When I read that, everything finally made sense on what I wasn't crazy, what I was going through. It was exactly what I thought it was. It's just gaslighting, and that power that she wrote in 2012 is the control and power. And I can get into a couple certain instances, but that's all it's about. It's all it's about.
Go ahead, share some instances. I mean, this is for others to really, and I know that. So a lot of my viewers, as you've seen, that they're all going through it, or there's some of them are just recognizing it, or I'll get people who message me and say, this is the first time I've seen this. What is this? I just filed for divorce, or we just separated and this is happening to me. What does this even mean? Right. So share some instances and some thoughts on, what that looks like for those parents.
Well, for me, I can handle it. The children cannot handle stuff like this. One big instance, my youngest was about 4. He loses his tooth at my house. He's excited. The tooth fairy's coming tonight, and he puts it underneath his pillow. Unfortunately, my day was finished and I was bringing them to her. He made my 4-year-old FaceTime me, crying that he wanted his tooth. But he left here excited underneath his pillow for next time. She wanted that. She has always had to have that very first experience. Some people might laugh at haircuts. I know that haircuts is one of the biggest things now as a form of control over the other parent. I spent maybe almost 3 hours in mediation just hammering out how and who is cutting the hair. I actually stopped and said, are we really talking about haircuts? I conceded in letting her friend who was currently cutting it. Unfortunately, when I went the last time to this person, she cut it the way I didn't ask. And I said, sorry, he wanted it a little shorter. Well, she doesn't cut his hair like this. I'm like, oh, that's funny because I don't see her here. Can you please? Right. So she ended up getting fired because the manager overheard everything, seeing how she was acting. I mean, you can only imagine, let your mind run wild and email the communication between me and my ex-wife that evening about this whole thing. It's those things. Even she has to control the haircuts.
And then you have the flying monkeys, right? Everyone does exactly what they say. They play the victim. They tell this story And they
Meanwhile,
get these people to align with them, including the CAS and the CPS and the judges and the lawyers. And you can see it in black and white that they say this is about control, this parent's unstable.
Mhm.
They're impeding the investigation, right? They're creating the narrative and they still align with them.
let me try to get you in my head about the fear that parents who get their children taken away from them. This is the only time I felt bad for myself. We're in Virginia on a road trip going to Myrtle Beach. We've been there 3 times with the kids. I love the 17-hour drive. Kids in the back screaming, VCR going. Nothing's better than that for me. I'll do it all the time, and we did. We get into a restaurant, and my oldest, he loses 3 teeth at McDonald's. Instead of being excited, I got worried on how she's going to get me in trouble for this. I sat down at McDonald's thinking, my son was laughing, my girlfriend at the time, all the kids were laughing, and I was actually scared. I hope she doesn't freak out that he lost teeth here.
Mhm.
One of the main things I learned from this before 2012, I really didn't think of what mental health is all about. I know now it is absolutely not a joke. And I'm still in therapy. I go I cut it down to bi-weekly, where I just kind of refresh on how things are going. And we can get into that about contact with the kids and everything. But I'll never forget that McDonald's restaurant. Everybody was laughing. And I thought, how in trouble am I going to be? It doesn't even make sense.
So heartbreaking
That's
because those moments should be fun and those moments should be enjoyable and they're triggers.
Yeah. You have no power when someone does that to you when it comes to kids.
That's good that you brought up what you're doing for you. Had you always been dealing or coping with your fear of the mental, emotional consequences of this, or is that something you just started as of recently?
No, I actually took 6 weeks off of work. I mean, going through divorce is hard enough.
Of course. Yeah.
Now add on top of it, you don't see your kids that you have. And then when you do see them, it's for 90 minutes. And then I can't speak Italian. I only speak Italian to my kids. I know, and it's weird. I don't want to be like I'm putting words, but I know that was put in there because I'm not animated, loud, typical Italian. I only speak Italian to my boys. I've never speak English to them because you're going to get English outside. That's how I
Yeah.
was brought up, and I wanted my children to be brought up like that.
Yeah.
And I forgot where I was going with this. What was your question?
Mental health, the mental health
No,
piece of work.
before 2012, not that I dismissed it, but I really didn't know anything about it because nothing really had happened. And once the divorce happened, then I started thinking, oh, okay, you were looking at this the wrong way, Massimo. This is an actual thing. And
Mhm.
I'm a firm believer that please ask for help if you need help. And family and friends, and we can touch on that too, on how they can play a big, big role in this. And I hope you ask me some things some people can benefit. Maybe I can say a couple things too towards that.
Yeah. So that's a great segue because your allegations of abuse were unfounded, and a lot of them are unfounded in these cases, right? So many parents face allegations of sexual abuse, which is the silver bullet. And one thing that I find with a lot of my clients is that when you think about family support and you think about your friend support, the minute you say, I'm going through a divorce, people are like, oh, I'm so sorry. I'm here for you, man, whatever you need, right? All of a sudden, hey, how's that divorce going? Well, I'm not going to tell them that my soon to be ex-wife is saying I'm sexually assaulting my kids. So I'm just going to downplay it and say, oh, it's complicated, high conflicts. Why don't you spend time with your kids? We're trying to work that out. How do you share that, right? And that's a big concern for a lot of parents who are going through it is you want support, but you're vulnerable. And people tend to believe kids tell the truth.
Yeah. Who wants to say stuff like this? What do you mean you're not
Right.
seeing your kids? I mean, my kids were always with
Sure.
me. I just become not vulnerable, but just, hey, I'm vulnerable. I need help. And this is what's
Yeah.
going on. I had one great friend and his wife who actually was my ex-wife's best friend up until university. And once all of this happened, she let her go because she said that's not a reason for any of this. They took me in every Monday night at 7:30. I could not read any of the lawyer stuff.
Yeah.
because reading those things is the hardest thing to do against you. So they were all
Yeah.
supportive. Hey, no, it's not that bad. It's not that bad. Why don't you come over? Let's have tea. Let's have coffee, and we'll help you read it and help you out. I must have did that for 6 months, if not longer. That helped so much. But you just have to ask. And if they're good enough for friends, and thank God
Mhm.
they were, they're still in my circle. They helped me through it because reading all those stuff against you, you can't make it out. You might miss something, and it might cause you to miss a court date or a mediation date or something because you don't want to look at it. The easiest thing is to turn a blind eye, but you just need help, and that's okay.
At any point, did you ever think this is just going to go away?
Yep,
This can't be
I got
real.
the false security October 2013. Mediation's done. I have a parenting plan. You
Yeah.
can only do this. I can do this. Okay, that's great. The second it was signed, within 2 weeks, she had made the children aware of something that she wanted to do. And instead of talking to me, she told the kids first. And then they came to me wanting to do something on my time. Little did I know that would be the next 6 years of constantly letting the kids know first. And then you're going to look like the bad guy instead of being an adult and saying, hey, I understand this is your time. I tried to deal with it, but you just try to keep going and focusing on your time with them. So my kids, I coached t-ball, baseball, soccer, indoor soccer. Me and my wife coached soccer together. I was there for all of these activities. And the sad part is that she missed a lot of these activities, but you're still in this situation, which just, I can't comprehend. You've been there, so involved. I've always been a joint custodial, shared time. There's never been a change in that unless she took it upon herself to change it. You just think of, why aren't they thinking of it like that type of thing? Are they forgetting all those things? And if you get into that snowball, that's another side of what you're going through, how it could be detrimental to yourself and your mental health. I became even more aware of it in 2020 during COVID, where everybody was on their laptops. Me and my wife, we started finding other alienated parents, and we had tons of conversations and the horror stories. Still going through it. Back, I'm giving my input. They're giving. It's almost one nice community, but how many people know of this?
Yeah. I mean, it feels so real, and it is so real, right? When you're going through it. But so many people don't know about it. I spread awareness. I work in mental health. I talk to people all the time. And I had dinner with the doctor the other day, a professional in somatic therapy treatment techniques who works with post-traumatic stress trauma. And I said, I'm a parental alienation coach. And she said, what's that?
Let's,
Right? You're like, oh my gosh, what? The whole conversation changed. And she was like, I know what you're talking about.
wow.
And the first thing she said to me was, oh, Angelina Jolie.
Right.
I was like, yes. And so you're like, thank you.
Yeah.
For once, that actually added some value to something, right?
Yeah.
But okay, so let's talk about today. How are things today? Where are you at? Where did you land?
So after 2023, if you can imagine, your youngest is here in your house. It's a Wednesday, and he asks you to sleep with him, and you say no because I was doing things, not thinking that the next day is going to end everything. You try not to go back and think about things. So first and foremost, the mental aspect is still pretty hard. I'll say one story to kind of put it into place. I was on a red eye from Las Vegas home, and everybody else was sleeping. I was watching a documentary on Shaquille O'Neal, and something crazy came up. And the interview was over with Shaq. He was talking about how many things he's won and everything. And then they're like, oh, we had one more question. He's like, that's okay. I don't sleep anyways because I'm still trying to cope with my sister's death and Kobe's death. And I just can't sleep no more. There's such a void. I started crying for about 20 minutes. I've slept twice since 2023, straight through. The second you wake up, you just go to, what could I have done? Did I see something? Could I have done something?
Yeah.
The only part I can't control, and my therapist pats me on the shoulder and says, you're doing so great. But I tell her I can't control when I close my eyes and go to bed. I can control everything else, but as soon as I shut my eyes and go to bed, if I wake up, it's the same thing. You just relive things. So when I heard Shaq, it's like, okay, somebody else is in the exact same spot. He's dealing with a void, and there's two voids in my life. There's nothing I can do. I don't think that void will ever get closed or filled. But other than that, there really is no contact with the kids. It sounds weird. I do text them maybe 3 to 4 times a week. I usually don't get responses, but it's pretty much like what happens in this house. If one of our dogs does something, or if I change something in this house, or if I do a renovation on the house. I remember I built the shed in the back. I sent them pictures of the sheds. I kind of keep them up to date on how everything is. I got an injury last week on my foot. I cut my foot. I sent them the picture of the stitches, and they're still my kids. I'm still their dad. I want them to see that I'm always there. When I do get a reply, it's something. It makes you really happy. You just keep going. I learned I'm much stronger than I thought I was, because if you can imagine all these things going on, people still have to go to work. Bills still have to get paid. I'm a contractor, so you still have to focus on commitments, and the job better be good because they're paying you money for this. So it's been a long 12 years. But I look at it after I read those things of my kids not wanting to be drilled by their mother. It's going to sound weird, but they're not drilled no more, and they don't have to go through that no more.
Yeah. That's so interesting. As we come to end here, I just read an article today, and one of the things that I read about the proper treatment pathway for some of these children is that they decide, it's just too much for me. I'm so tired of the turmoil myself as a child. I'm just going to make a decision and end it for everybody. I'm going to stay with the aligning parent, and that solves the problem. There's no more back and forth. There's no more fighting. There's no more heartbreak. I don't have to live in fear. I'm not going to be judged. I'm not going to be drilled. I'm just going to spare everyone any fear or pain, and I'm just going to align with this. It's just devastating, absolutely devastating.
And that's the hardest thing that the outside people don't understand, is that decision, that choice. They don't understand, why aren't they coming? What did you do? They don't understand it.
It's self-preservation. As a young child, you have to think that way.
Mm-hmm. Can you imagine making a decision like that?
And say that doesn't have long-term consequences and it doesn't affect them. It's just unreasonable. So what do you have to say to the viewers before we close out? What are your final thoughts? If you can do things differently, or if you can offer any last bits of advice, what would that be?
If there's any way to get those notes that I didn't get 7 years earlier, maybe that could have gotten a judge to look at things differently. Ask for help. You can't do this on your own. You absolutely cannot. And it's okay to ask for help. And you're not weak. You're not weak at all. Keep loving your children. That's all you can do. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, thank you for joining Fractured Families Podcast. Help you navigate your family challenges. So remember, healing is a journey, and reaching out for help is a sign of strength. You're not alone. If you found today,